tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take sh**. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take sh**. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that.
Woohoo! What is up, y'all? My name is Amy Newman, and welcome to Life as an Atheist. I would just want to also just send love out to everybody out there on the inner tubes and in chat. And I just would like you to remember to like, follow, or subscribe. Hit that button, y'all. And I just want to thank Women Atheists Unloaded for having me on, for having me in the Skeptic Haven. I kind of came to this journey as an atheist through, I think as many do, through starting in the theistic position, though I've actually met many who have started out, have been atheists their entire lives. But I come from a Jewish on both sides of my family. My mother and father both are secular Jews. However, for whatever reason, I also have to just send love out there. I just say so many people, to be continued 1 second. I just want to send, I see Kathy Humanist and James W. and What the Beck and Look at the Trees and It's Rubrics and Stephanie Helms, Kathy Humanist, Dan D. So many amazing people out there. Did I say Captive Death? All of you, it's just sending love. And so my parents, although they were secular, and to this day, I still do not think I've ever had a religious conversation with my dad. He really doesn't care about that sort of thing. However, my mom, she thought to be a good Jew, which I always laugh when I think theists, they always have this generalized interpretation, which they kind of say, religious equal good. And so I at least have to attempt to make my child religious so they equal good. And so my secular Jewish mother, who eats bacon hamburgers, decided to send me to a conservative synagogue. If you don't know the tiered list, because I guess with Islam, you have the Sunni and the Shia. You can have different liberal, moderate, and conservative interpretations. You have the Protestant and the Catholics over with Christianity, maybe Eastern Orthodox over here to the side, along with those, once again, liberal, moderate, conservative variations. But when it comes to Jews, it tends to be, also I have to bring up, I forget which comedian says it, but the word, it's the only word that you can be used with such love. Oh my God, I love the Jewish people, and then the Jews. Though I'll talk about that later on when I come back full circle, why we shouldn't be prejudiced towards our theist brothers and sisters, even when we are pushing our non-theism. And so I was sent to this conservative synagogue. I had really no conception of religion or theology or any of that nature. I think as most children do, you get put in front of a religious leader. In this case, it was one Monday a week. Made one day. Monday, even worse. If you don't like Monday, wait until you have Monday, then Hebrew school. Which it wasn't like they weren't particular mean, but if you already had public school, it wasn't like I had no school or just the Hebrew school. It was the public school. Then you're done that, and instead of video games, religion. Just exactly what every child wants. And so you do that once a week, and then Shabbat Shalom, for whatever reason, there is a Saturday. I guess you could do it all 4 Saturdays, but one specific Saturday we had to go a month to the synagogue. And so that was really my introduction to theism. Now, I had Hebrew preschool. I don't really know exactly how much different that is from other preschools. And then I have, and I say this with a lot of love, please understand. I was signed up. I wasn't kicking and dragging, but I was sent to Jew Scouts. Which was just most organizations, whether you're a brownie or whether you're a Boy Scout, I don't know if most people know this, but they're sponsored by religious organizations. And so I was sent to the Scouts version, the brownies or whatever version, but with all Jewish people. Yes, it's like the same thing, though it's much harder to cook matzah over the fire. No. Or to sell matzah. Oh my God, you're selling the cookies? I love cookies. Yes. These cookies. How much do you like cookies that rise? Are you like big into cookies that like have rising leaven? Is your God into that? Okay. And so I did that. And you're going along, and it's a mixture. I also, as I'm going through these public schools and the religious school, I didn't notice this until much later in life. But I had kind of 2 sets of friends. It wasn't like I picked them, but you just kind of develop 2 sets of friends. I had friends that I would say come from a religious background, although we didn't do religious things. In fact, most of my religious friends, we spent very hard trying to figure out how to be secular because Game Boy was the hottest thing. And I remember, and so was, I may be dating myself, but Game Boy, Walkman. And we had these. Well, I don't know why our parents allowed us to have these if you're going to send us to a religious school. But nonetheless, we found loopholes. I'll give you one example. Is that there are certain prayers that during ceremonies, because a lot of the time they're doing songs, just like, I'm sure the other religious denominations do, and specific prayers are so holy, so amazingly holy, that you actually have to shut the doors, and no one is allowed in, and no one is allowed out. You better hope you don't have to pee. And so, knowing this, I guess we figured out when we had to pee. Because, we would sneak out, and then they'd lock the doors. And then we'd be like, oh, my, I guess we can't go back. And I could just imagine, like, Jewish bodyguards. I imagine they were just adults or anyone older than 12, but going like this. But, and so we would just leave and then play video games and listen to music. However, when we're actually in the Monday classes and stuff, they did the whole whitewashing of the stories. It was a friendly boat. Noah was, didn't really bring up the drunkard part. I guess you figure that out much later too. But Noah, he's the underdog. No one really was going to believe in him. And so he came around and it just started raining. And God was like, look, everyone on earth is an asshole. And you're going to start over. And, Moses, getting my imaginary people confused. And Noah was like, oh, well, is everyone else going to be okay? And you keep on turning the book, and they're like, oh, yeah, no, the winter makes them filled with cuddles and hugs and stuff. And you're like, oh, great, this is a great preschool version of this. I'm glad everyone turns out happy in the end. And so, yeah, you go through that. I'll finish up the me and bolts on the denominations. There is the super hippie liberal. Woo! The eating bacon. My parents, basically. They call them secular because non-religious. I guess there are some metaphorical Jews as well. But you have, all the way on the other side, you have the Orthodox Jews. These are the ones that, well, it's funny. I guess a lot of the religious institutions have dress codes. I always love when they have dress codes, but these are the ones with the curls and beards, because for whatever reason they take the same route as the Muslims. You're showing you're a man, etc., etc. That's why you see all that type of look, similar to the Amish. The Amish, to me, just also random tangent. I always find how we have just like normalized the Amish because we're like, they make great furniture. So like, it's cute. It's humble. Basically, if religious places could be, oh yeah, send love to the producers in the backstage. It'll be like a spoiler, but absolutely. So to be continued. Feel free. And then they're basically the middle ground. The middle ground are the moderates. I jokingly call them the Ben Shapiro Jews. They're the conservative Jews. They will wear business suits and then wear kippas, yarmulkes. And so I guess we're going through all of that. And so I made a deal with my mother, because once again, my dad was probably watching the Eagles game while most of this was occurring. Just once again, just sending, I see Tighten Your Anus, Producer Wes, James Wolfe, and Sage Ohio, and Casey A, and Kalisa, Pragmatic Crystal, Ryan, so many people, fantastic people, Jason. Yes, and so I made a deal with my mother, who when I say, I don't talk like a Jewish mother, she says, I don't talk like this. I'm like, not at all. But I said, listen, I'll do the whole bar bat mitzvah thing. I'll become a real adult at the age of 12, 13, as real adults definitely are. And so I said, listen, I'll do that. You'll get to have your cries, the happy cries. There'll be very, very light-skinned people dancing awkwardly. It's gonna be great. You're gonna have a great time. You'll cut a cake and stuff. And so I said, if we do that, if we make that deal, I can end this religious shtick. I do this for you, and I never have to do a religious thing again. Now, I made this not going in with the mindset of I hate religion, I am an atheist, put the A card and type my fedora on. I was just like, this stuff is weird. It doesn't make sense. I don't really understand how a lot of these, you're talking 2,000, 3,000 plus things. Like, great. I know. But Pixar actually, they're really hot right now. And they're doing like the same thing that you guys are saying, but like better. And so, yeah. So I was out. And so we did that. My mom cried. My dad probably clapped or something. I said Hebrew. All I can remember I'm sure all of the investment of that at this point is the alphabet, which is just Aleph, Bet, Vet, Aleph, Bet, Vet, Gimel, Dal, Hey, Gimel, Dal, Hey. Amazing. Money well spent, if I ask you. And so I did that, and I was out. To be continued. Welcome, Courageous.
Hey everyone. I'm just but also just what you were talking about is super interesting. So I'm Jewish, but I was raised exclusively Christian, and so now that I'm an atheist, I've been learning a lot more about Judaism because I've really I think there's no religion is above criticism. Like there's things about every religion where you can really get into
100%.
But depending on which type of Judaism you're raised in, there are certain things that, like, talking to rabbis are being like, man, I wish I could have been raised growing up believing that instead of believing that I'm like this horrible evil sinner. Like,
100%. I am very thankful. Like I've heard decent stories from other religions right now, and even I'm very happy to take the secular Jews who, my joke is always the Jews, at least for half of them, they like have 1 foot already out of the religion door. Like it is the weird religion, at least right now, that you can go to a rabbi and you can be like, Rabbi, I don't think I believe in God. And they'll go, God. And I cannot imagine that from like most other religious denominations.
I mean, I will say the really orthodox, hardcore Jews are usually
100%.
They're a little bit more like on the fundamentalist side of Christianity with how legalistic they can be. But overall, like most of the Jews that I have met and I've interacted with, like when I tell them I'm an atheist, they're like, that's great. You're looking for truth and whatever that truth is,
asking questions.
Yeah. And just to clarify, like my mom never taught me that I was a horrible evil sinner, that like my dad's a Calderone.
Good.
So I just want to make sure, like,
you were destined to be however you were anyway.
I never taught you that. I'm like, oh, no, you didn't.
Where did you learn that?
Yeah. But
and so I just want to say it's interesting that you say that, because first of all, shout out to my co-host James W., who kind of was raised in a similar relationship. It was kind of like a Jews for Jesus kind of situation, and so they kind of see themselves as like a middle ground, and so they borrow aspects from both. And so it's those Abrahamic religions, though, I'll tell you.
So my mom grew up in, I guess what you would like the way that she, and I hate this analogy because it is under like Christian terms, but this is what she would tell me, is that her family growing up was like the Jewish equivalent of the Christians that only go to church on Easter and Christmas.
Yes,
so, like,
very much so.
My grandfather had narcissistic personality disorder. He was only sure if he got food or if he got a gift. Like.
And I like giving gifts. I'll tell you, I have secularized holidays because I like giving gifts. I like the fact that I wish everyone was nicer regularly, but people tend to be nicer on those times. I did the entire, when I hear things like take the Christ out of Christmas, I'm like, Oh no, that's the exact plan, and all the other ones too. Any of the good holidays, we'll take those, and any of the ones there where you're fasting or you're, any of those, you can have those.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't want to just like completely derail your story because you're on a roll.
No, you're good. I could probably rant endlessly. So please tell me if I'm ever going out into outer space. But yeah, I guess I made that contract. I said I want to be out, but I didn't really feel particularly strong on philosophy and science and theology, all of these harder questions. I think I was just too young to really conceptualize them. And so it was kind of, once I had the freedom, kind of now I'm out of the institution. And I will agree with you, just a side note tangent, that it is the more fundamentalist. It's because I'm making up, it's just, this is my gut, and who knows, someone please correct me, but it feels like, at least in America, like 50% of the Jews are secular. And to me means that they're this big liberal bloc that is just, it becomes the perception that this is what the religion is, because the majority of the Jews are this. And so it comes with this weird dichotomy. In one way, they are completely ignoring their book. Like it says like horrible stuff in there. And you're like, he names himself jealous. Like, that's what supervillains do. Like, I don't know any apologetic. I've heard people be like, yeah, but it's jealousy to glorify himself. And you're like, still a little supervillainy, but whatever. But like most of the Jews, they completely ignore that. And they're like, yeah, but like it said this story was metaphorical.
Yeah, so the thing is, being raised by a Calvinist, it's that like that they would say it's righteous jealousy, because there's a certain jealousy where it's like, like you're coveting over something that wasn't yours. But there's also like a healthy amount of jealousy of like if someone's hitting on your husband and you're not in a open relationship and they're trying to like take what's yours. In this case, like, since God created everything and he gave you life, you should be giving him what's owed. And when you're not, he is righteously jealous. Like, this is how they look at it.
So no, but let's take that apologetic on, because I think it comes back full circle. I think there is like, okay, so healthy, if you're in a relationship, they use the partner. Is it okay if your partner is doing something inappropriate to say jealous, something jealous? I say not only that, but it's actually healthier to even express that, have a conversation, get through that, etc., etc. Now, if your partner comes home and they're like, hey, B, I know that we argued about the dishes, and I suck at the dishes, and I'm going to do better about them. And they're like, no, I'm completely over it. And by that, I have now decided to call myself Dish Lord. And you're like, oh, okay. I mean, that sounds healthy. I may have to work on it, but yes, Dish Lord, I will.
Right.
So yes, it is just a weird thing. I just think if you're going to take that title, however, who knows? I guess once again, I weren't the Amalekites. I was my other joke. This is my not my final joke on the subject, but I'm just pretending like it is. But I'm always like, they're like, we nuked Sodom and Gomorrah, and I'm like, yeah, but like, we came back and won so hard. We now like took the rainbow, that like God took a rainbow after Sodom and Gomorrah. We're like, you think you won, right? We'll take that. Thanks though. Anyway, continuing.
I know, and that's one of the funniest ones to me though, is whenever they'll be like Sodom and Gomorrah, and it's like Ezekiel 16 49 through 50 says that the sin of God, Sodom and Gomorrah was refusing to care for the needy and the poor. Why do you think that conservative Christians don't pay attention to that verse?
Because then they would have to actually care about anyone.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I was going to make a really rowdy joke because I'm very politically moderate, but I was going to say anyone that's living. Spicy. Anyway, sending love. We're talking about women, though. In fact, let's get to that subject because I'll get to like my atheism. I'm getting closer and closer to that really top level A word. But like while we're on the subject and speaking about women and atheism, the religions, especially of the Abrahamic variety, do not like women. And I can understand how I'm sure there's some cherry-picked version of some religious passage where it was like, this woman did something for God. All I can think about, unfortunately, is poor Rebecca of Rika. We were just reading a chapter in Joshua where they committed a genocide in the Jericho, and the only person they allowed to live was the one woman, the one prostitute, and pro-sex work, but they convinced her to give secrets and let the soldiers then be able to topple the town, and they killed everyone in it. Or as I like to call it, #loving God. Women.
Well,
yes.
Yeah, and then the other one is like JL, where she like tricks someone into her tent. How do you think she did that? And then while he was asleep, she put his
Listen. Sometimes you just have to take matters into your own. Well, not only that, but they are very, I hate to use the word triggered, but they go out of their way, like, to consistently go, like, and then the male kind, and women kind, and then the manservants, and then the maid servants. And do you understand which order we're going in, ladies? Pay attention. I have never found, until they completely liberalize, not in Judaism, once again, because so much of them have liberalized. I've met female rabbis, but it's very frowned upon in many of the churches. It's still frowned upon in much of the Islamic world. Every time I get up to Islam, and I guess it kind of comes full circle with hold on, first cat of the day. Actually, there's one sleeping right over there, but next cat of the day. Hi, baby boy.
I think one of the things that really opened my eyes up to the misogyny was one the learning more about human psychology and the way that people respond to trauma, and then reading the story of Lot and his daughters. Of how these young girls who were just had their house surrounded with 100 men. I mean, obviously I don't believe any of this happened, but as far as
sure
in the Bible,
oh no,
there's these men that are around and they want to rape the angels. They don't know it's an angel, but they want to rape the angels. And their dad offers their virginal daughters up to be raped instead.
And he is the moral pillar. Right. He's the moral foundation of this story.
The family is fleeing because the entire city is getting destroyed. And they lose their mom. So these are two very traumatized girls. Now, in a normal circumstance, if you have two girls and a man locked in a cave, who's raping who? Is it going to be the man that's going, wait, everybody's dead. You won't have any husbands. I have to do this. Or would it be these young girls who just are severely traumatized and had violent men threatening to rape them that would then turn around and rape their own father.
Basically horrible on top of horrific on top of horrendous.
Yeah.
And once again, this was the moral God sending the most moral family to be the survivors, and still the matriarchal figure. I also like how God is also very good at killing random humans. That's a little off topic, but he kills someone for picking up sticks. But
like that, and then like Jephthah's daughter, like she doesn't even have a name. Like Isaac got saved, but who cares about a daughter, right?
Well, not only that, but they don't really talk about selling your. They don't talk about selling. They only talk about selling. Why can't I think of the opposite? They only talk about selling your daughters into slavery. They don't seem to talk about selling your little boys into slavery because they looked at women as chattel, because they looked at them as property. You looked at them as a bargaining chip. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, the most horrific law that I know of within the Torah, which has nothing to do with the story, is a law, is like this compromise between the rape victim and the rapist, in which the Jewish law goes, okay, we know you as the father. They like push the rape victim to the side. We know you as the father. You have lost your property. But let's make a deal with you. The rapist will marry your daughter, and now you have a son. There we go. The daughter, a son. I've eluded me for a second. You now have a son who will pay for fees and be able to get you money back. Most moral God in the world. Can't think of any other.
That was something that like was always seemed just bananas to me, because if you believe in a God who is all loving and all powerful, which not everybody does, but you know, like the theoretical, like that's what I was raised with,
the omnis,
right? That like, and like especially like, so because I believed in Jesus and that Jesus was supposed to restore the broken temple, so therefore the brokenness in all of us, like why wasn't it? Because if you're supposed to believe that he was the same then than he is now, then why wasn't it kill the rapist and treat the girl as if nothing ever happened to her? Why not restore her to her status and just punish the person who did bad? Instead, you have to treat her like she is broken, damaged property.
Can I tell you that Christopher Hitchens used to have a saying that we could create a better 10 Commandments on a napkin? And so we could just easily just chop out so much human suffering if we had just said, thou shalt not own humans as property, and thou shalt kill thy rapist. I don't know. Remove thy rapist from society forever. I don't know. Anything that isn't, I don't know, make the rapist family? That's... What? Okay. Yeah, women get the short end of the stick in almost every way. I cannot think of a actual, when it comes to Christianity, they start to revere, in my opinion, weird things about Mary. It's, once again, maybe it's not weird from like a insider's perspective, but like, excuse me for one second, cough. But like the thing about Mary is, once again, it is that she is this virgin that has never done anything wrong. And by wrong, they mean she's never had sex, because sex is wrong, even though she's married, though more questionable is her age, but that is a different story.
Yes.
But then really, what is her title in this? Well, she gave birth to Jesus. She gave birth to the Messiah. I'm trying to think of I know of many matriarchs that I could think of that I would revere, and they mostly get called Moan of Mark, and then they get burned. We'll let the audience fill in who that person was. But so the strong, independent women throughout religious history, either within the holy text or even in teaching positions, because women shall not, for the most part, teach, even though we know just from a statistics point, because men can make amazing, awesome teachers, but women just have naturally started to fill up the universities, especially in a lot of educational roles. And so the notion of to then say that to not have women teachers, to me, is cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. I don't know how to say, is very silly. And that's the lightest version. We went from something very horrible to something very civil. I'm trying to think, because there is really so much. Let's go. Oh, I remember. I wanted to go to Islam, and then every time I bring up Islam and Judaism, I always have to put up like asterisks, because there's so many fundamentalist Christians specifically, and I'm sure atheists and other religious people do it too, but they get, I hate to say, a metaphorical hard-on when they hear atheists talk crap against Judaism and Islam, because they're like, yeah, that's what we hate. We hate that, and you hate that. It's like, okay, it's not really that we hate it. It's that we think it's silly. We think it's just as equally silly. And so you shouldn't be prejudiced. My double asterisk, I now have to include Christians, because I know they're like, why can't you include us in this? You should not be prejudiced towards religious people of any variety. Doesn't matter to the most fundamentalist, to the metaphoricalist, to the most deist. You should treat them as individuals, because us as atheists, that top A word that we should be normalizing, we know we can use that. It's not even a agnostic claim. It's a knowledge claim. We know we're all brothers and sisters. They all think they're different and they have the right things. But to us, as far as I could tell, it's just like the Jewish fan club over here and the Christian fan club over here and the Muslim fan club over here. And they all just think that their book get-togethers are the right one. Cool. And so we have to treat them with respect and dignity as we knock away all of their silly claims. And most of them are very silly once you get to the nuts and bolts of them. In fact, sometimes the smarter the theists, the better they are at making very silly claims sound rational, including very horrible things like we've been just trying to talk about. They try and massage every horrible thing that Courageous and myself have just been talking about. There's I'm sure, an apologetic for why they weren't telling women to get in line. They were telling them to be humble and just know their place. Wink, 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 wink. But all of those tend to be, well, let's use a triggering word. They hate the word racist, but misogynistic. So, yeah, unfortunately, the Abrahamic religions are filled with both tribalism and misogynistic language. Also, just sending out, I see Dan D and Our Dying Sun. I'm going to keep on sending love to everyone who joins us. I'll keep on going down, just getting closer and closer. So I had already, to that big A word, I had already left religion, but I did not believe in any sort of counter-apologetics. I didn't. If you had said the word epistemology to me, I would have said Gesundheit. And I had just never really thought that deeply about these subjects until my early 20s. And I would say throughout my early 20s to my early 30s, I really started getting into atheism. I started getting into not just not being a theist, but identifying as an atheist. And I would say I had two big fundamental pillars in that. The first is because of my age denomination, the Four Horsemen. Christopher Hitchens, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, and Daniel Dennett. Dan, sometimes I think he always gets forgotten because he's like the much more quiet spoken of the four. And so, though he created qualia, I kind of disagree on qualia. I understand what he's explaining, like the notion of an experience, but that may just be everything, the algorithm just pumping everything together. Nonetheless, the Four Horsemen, especially Christopher Hitchens, while he was alive, sending love to all of his works, because we can't really say love to him, but we can actually remember the dead. It's actually very important to remember the dead because we are one of the few species who can, not the only species. Very important that I like to remind, because atheists seem to have this fact in the back of their head, but it's very triggering to keep on using that word, upsetting to creationists that we are animals. They say it with such a disdain. Maybe you're an animal, not me. I am this gold-plated of amazingness that came down from the heaven. Okay, sure. It's really a selective bias. I mean, I see it in myself. I think I'm intelligent, but I walk into walls. You haven't seen me around the house. Take my word for it. And so, we're kind of, we show our I wouldn't even say lesser forms. I would say our emotional brain sometimes, our lizard brain sometimes. We often have fight and flight emotions. But I often find people who dislike the fact that we are animals. I find that they have things backward from their perspective, because from their mind, they are going, here is a human, okay? And here is basically every other animal. Why are you taking humans? And why are you trying to tie them down here? And that's not the right way to think of it. The correct way to think it, as you can tell from my English 101 and 102 courses, is that humans are here and that other animals are also here, and that we are all conscious, sentient, introspective creatures, or many of us are. I can't say that about every organism, but many organisms out there have all of the traits and qualities that we would identify with as ourselves. And it doesn't even have to be sapient. It should be in many of the times, because people will say, like, are you calling me an ape? Or, I'm sorry, we are an ape. But they say even worse than that statement, because that would be actually correct. They could say that with an angry tone. But they say, are you calling me a monkey? As if, like, a monkey is a dumb animal. That hurts me on, like, on just like a biological level. Like, imagine being one of the smartest animals on earth. And then just someone turning to it and being like, you're going to be like this thing over there, as they're putting the monkey in the spacesuit. All right, whatever. But yes. And so it is about understanding. Not that it's a race. Not that, because we often get that by confused to once again use a triggering word, racist. They're like, well, why is insert this is so much more evolved? That makes evolution racist. No. Once again, you do not understand how evolution, and let me also explain how time works. We're gonna work it all. You see, if we're all a series of generations of life that have been here for 4.5 billion with a B years old. We've all been in the arms race. The slug that, once again, the creationists have put down here is just as equally evolved. Okay, if a turtle was born on the exact same day that you were, that you are as equally evolved as each other. Now, I like to point out that because of how population genetics works, you say, well, how is there any movement in any direction at all? Well, the older generations are just slightly have less chance of having genetic accumulation, and your future generations, thus, because of the accumulation of you and the Mrs. or the Mr., whichever way you're going, or both, you have now made a new organism that is that much more accumulation of genes on top. That is how you get a more. So if you don't have to. You want to get a more evolved creature, you don't have to think of aliens or robotics. You just got to bump uglies with your significant other. And so, yes, we should value a long tangent because it really does. It bothers me that they. I think let me see if I can tie it back all the way. It's one of the things. There's numerous things. I'll tell you something that bothers me on a fundamental level. Because of one of the toxic places that I grew up in the debate community, in fact, it was the Four Horsemen. So let's put that there. What was the other prong then, in my opinion, how I got to atheism? And that was I started to, I guess, fall in love with debating, which is kind of a weird thing. But I love the idea, especially more once you get to Socratic Method, because people kind of chill out when they don't realize that it's debate and they just think that it's having a conversation. But I like the idea of ideas mashing together and seeing where the facts of the matter lay. I find that although I'm stubborn, I like to think that in my skepticism, when you present new information to me, maybe not in the moment, it's always hard, just as a human, to accept new things in the moment. But often after you get angry, you cool down, you've said all your talking points and all that, and you've looked at the new information and you kind of confirm it over and over and over, and there's no way for you to disagree with it except for you to have some cognitive dissonance. You should take it on board. That's really what the peer-reviewed empirical system is. A bunch of scientists who are trying to put their theories, a framework of facts, because there's another word that upsets them, theory. And so I grew up in as my 20s into 30s, I started out in a very toxic debate community, probably one of the most toxic debate communities you could start out in. I was on 4chan. Now, 4chan, if you don't know, is just nothing but an image board. Okay? And an image board just means that all of the posts on 4chan have to be with an image. It's the only way you can say anything. Now, you can add text. That's how you can have conversations. I think you actually can override it now that I'm saying you don't have. But generally, it is an image board in which everyone is sharing images. And so I have all of these different subjects before me. I come from B. B is random, unfortunately. I found this place because of World of Warcraft and general chat. Once again, showing my age, I come from a gaming time where there really was 40-man raids, and we were able to get 40 people together somehow, all consistently, and try and defeat a dragon. Anyway, while you're trying to defeat the dragon, people are shouting things randomly into the void. And so you're like, what is this? And I ended up on 4chan. And through those channels, there is a funny joke on 4chan, which is we have a containment board. And that is all of the terrible, horrible, horrible people are basically on a very specific board. Everyone thinks when they say 4chan's horrible, they think they mean 4chan. They mean poll, the politically incorrect board on 4chan. That is where all the horrible stuff. Okay? Now, there was a dedicated campaign, at least in the olden days, for a lot of the far, far right. They would basically stay on the storm fronts and all the fucks. They'd basically do raids. And they would raid Reddit. They would raid 4chan. Now, this was already after it got off to a slow start because 4chan created the news board. I'm that old also. There was a news board. The news board got nuked. It became the politically incorrect board. And now, whenever something is terrible or said on 4chan, everyone says, get back to poll, get back to your containment board. I haven't been on there in a while, though. But what I did learn from being on there is these far-right Christian nationalists, they are some of the most extremist people that you can come across. I developed a lot of my weirdly centrist ideology, a lot of my pluralistic, liberalistic, freedom, secular, all of it almost in reaction to these people. Sending love to my partner. I developed in this because I knew firsthand. Let's take on everything that I've been talking about, my entire life story. I was so sheltered and so bubbled, okay? I did not have a really bad day of my life. Like, I had the type of bad days that happen in a sitcom that end with like, gee willikers, I hope we learned something, until I was 20. Like, until the real world starts to happen. And so it is like vastly surprising to start to hear all of these anti-Jewish conspiracy theories among all of the other horrible, horrible things that they say. Because first of all, I guess if it's in a void and you know nothing and you're just listening, they post on poll. They're famous for this. They call them infographics. And they leak down to all of the other, I'm sure, Discords and the whatever. And it's just like these cherry-picked, it's just like the Creationists do. If the link is even true of itself, because generally they don't even have links. It's just, it says something, you take it as fact, blah, 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 blah. And by mass produce, they just go out there. And just like with Creationists, you have to go, is this true? Is this true? Is the protocol elders of Zion, is that it? Was there really? The Soros is a lizard. Okay, space, laser. And so you start to look through all of these, and you start to realize that, holy moly, these people and this is like my weird connection. Maybe this is how I get to the Socratic method, because people often say, Amy, how the hell do you talk with... There are some people, let me tell you their views. And because I know at the end of the day, I have talked with so many of these people that I know, to use another Yiddish word, I know at the end of the day, they're just a bunch of schmucks. Like, they're just a bunch of, not always guys, but often guys, who are just like isolated, thrown away. They get into like this weird, I hate to say man's club, because that's the way they try and push it, but it's just like, at another word, toxic. It is just like all of the hate and all of the fuming, just we weren't given a good stick, and there's a reason why we weren't given a good game in life, and why Sarah doesn't like me and won't take me to the prom also, right? And you're like, what? And you're like, okay. And you go through all of these, and, you know, I really just want to know if, and this will be, I just want to know if all of the Jews are in control on it. I just want to know one thing. It's just one very simple thing. I have student loans. And I understand that many people have student loans. All I'm talking about, I feel like if we're going to control the world, and I have to be stuck in, that's the other thing. The people that hate Jews, they are also like, even to the atheists, the Jewish people who are now identified, they're like, no, you stay. The other weird thing I learned, and this weird, like they can't admit that Jesus is a Jew. Okay, like the peak, they have to be like, the whole basis is being anti-Semitic.
I've heard that. Being like, no, he was Polish, and you're like, what?
Oh, yeah.
What
No, they have. He was. No, you don't even understand. He was tall and light skinned and blonde and blue. Is that, you're like, what? Okay. But he not only can they not square the circle. Okay, so got to be anti-Semitic, but then there's like this guy over here they call the King of the Jews. I don't know why they would call him the King of the Jews. It must be because like he's a Jain or something, probably. They refer to him as Rabbi numerous times in. It's like it starts with a B. Ibel, Mibel, Kleibel. The book doesn't come to mind, but it calls him Rabbi, like in this book, over and over and over. And yet, he's not Jewish. You got to understand. Not only that, do you know what I like? How they kind of, they say he is a Hebrew. I'm like, what? It's like, right, yes. Hebrew. I'm like, okay. And my joke is always at the end of this, when I always hear people fight over who the real Jews are, which is just such a weird thing to hear from like another religion. Like, you'll never hear a Christian be like, you're not a real Muslim. Like, because they don't care. And yet, who a real Jew is utmost important to a lot of religious people. But yes, and so I found this toxic culture. Unfortunately, I like sweat some days because I feel like it's been a slow burn. I used to talk with people, including my mother. My mother would be like, why do you talk to these people? Because I didn't know. This is how sheltered I was. I didn't know the word Ashkenazi. I was bar and bat mitzvah. I was sent to Hebrew school. I didn't know what Ashkenazi was because the Jews don't really care. Like, this is my secret to, like, the anti-Semitic people. They don't. Like, that's the whole secret about being a Jew. You get
I don't know. I think
shit.
they care a whole lot because I've been on Jewish Twitter lately, and I mean, they're all about like Orthodox are the only real Jews, and Reforms are going like, what are you talking about? If we would all be sent to a concentration camp, we would all be like, we're Jewish. Like, it's what are you talking?
The more fundamentalist. So I say I give a lot of charity in speaking, not just to the Jews because of my background, but because of so many converted to like a liberal secularism. However, I mean, a fundy's going to fundy. A Hasidic Jew is not that much different than a evangelical Christian or a Dawa speaking Muslim. I mean, they're all at that point, they're all just same flavors of like, which Star Wars chapter do you like?
Yeah, and I mean, and I think it can be really frustrating and maddening and disheartening to speak with people who are that zealous, but at the same time, you know, like Biddy Buddha, she used to walk down the candy aisles of grocery stores and pray a protection for Christians, that the witches that would hex the candies and like pass them out on Halloween. Like,
See,
these are things that she believed. She believed that the witches were putting hexes on candies so that Christian families would bring that candy into their home and they would get possessed by demons. So she would walk down the candy aisle praying for protection against those hexes to protect the Christian families. And now she's like, you know, on fire, like atheist activist. So it's like, if you you know, it can be really, you know, and like if I'm on Twitter and you're talking with someone who has like 12 followers and like, you know, is like has alt-right images and their stuff, like, no, I'm not going to talk to them. But like when you're talking with people, you know, a lot of times there is another human being on the other line, and
Absolutely.
you never know what seeds you're planting.
Well, and can I also I cannot agree with that more. I think that not the worst thing to do, but I think that we often have a gut reaction is to shut people down who say horrible things. And the moment it comes halfway out of their mouth, not out of their mouth, because the moment they say something horrible, we need to bat it away. But it goes to my same thing with atheists in general, is that I think that atheists, when they hear theists, oftentimes we have heard the kalam so much that the moment that they start saying it, we're like, ba-da-ba, ba-da-ba-da, ba-da-ba-da. And a lot of times, if someone has just heard the kalam and they think it's the most amazing thing ever, and you're cutting them off, I'm giving more charity here. I'm using this as an example because it's much harder to do that with someone prejudiced, with someone being racist or tribalist in something. But I think what often happens, the mistake is that some of these people want to be validated in their hate. And so they come in with like what you word is in their mind is like a righteous hate. They come in thinking that they hate. Oh, I remember now the also that word. I'm going to write down one of the words from those circles. In fact, I'll just say it now that I'm thinking about it. There's a word that I learned on 4chan that I use a lot because I think that it speaks to them. And I think that they are guilty of it. And then I'll eventually get to where I got to the positive debate community. This debate community is the word degeneracy. You hear that a lot when they attack minorities, women, and the LGBTQ. Mm-hmm. And I find this word, what it tends to mean is basically the breakdown of society and culture. And I find that I think I'm actually using this term correctly, ironic. I find that ironic because in my opinion, what is happening is that as we have become a kinder, gentler, more empathetic and fair society, we've actually become a better society. We have actually become less degenerate towards our brothers and sisters. And this is where, once again, I hope that they understand really what I mean by this, because they're always like, this coming from you? Yes, that is the point. I believe that a lot of the actual degeneracy, the actual breakdown of the larger bringing together of people as a society, as brothers and sisters, comes from religion. Religion is who breaks us apart into different groups. Religion is who tells us to judge your neighbor. And not only that, religion is the one who says some of those judgments must be death for who they are. So yes.
That is something, I mean, that is not like I feel like I've known other atheists who believe that as well. I don't fully believe that, because I believe that a lot of the things because religion is married to so many other things, that it has to do with humans. So like, I think that like all religion could disappear tomorrow and humans would still be trying to divide themselves, make themselves intellectually superior, and kill themselves over like philosophy and politics, because they already do those things. So what they do is they take these, like philosophies like white supremacy. I mean, that's literally, when you're talking about degeneracy, anything that harms white supremacy, so people of color, LGBTQ people, like these are things that threaten their this idea of an America or a land that is just their place.
Never actually existed. I'm gonna keep on also pointing out.
No, it never existed. Like,
because sometimes they'll always, I don't know why. I know why they romance sometimes, but then at the same time, when they're like very specifically this 1950s, they're like, for one very specific, very segment, it was very good. But if you look over to like your friend who you work side by side, your coworker, like, the different water fountains might not have been like the whole good thing. Yes. And so here, I would agree with you, but it goes back to like what I think about what I say. Is that another cat? Sometimes if I hear scratching, that means they want in. But it goes back to us not having to judge theists, but theism. It is a cat. Okay. It takes me a second because there's nice cats like headphones. And there's one cat in, one cat out. There's two cats looking at each other. But that I agree with you. Okay, let's start with that. That I think if you were to eliminate religion right now, I think that we would still have, holy moly, a whole other slosh of problems to figure out. If not, we could create other problems that we don't even have foretold yet. I mean, the way I think about this, just to go completely sci-fi, maybe one day when we actually have synthetic life and synthetic conscious, where we're judging them. However, started thinking about AI, and then I got. I also think that just because it wouldn't solve everything, I do think that religion does have, like, especially when if you've noticed kind of a trend, unfortunately, it's the fundamentalist of almost all of these religions. Although I always am like, yes, you're taking it literally. Although even them, some of the times, they look at the atheist. I think the atheists are the ones who actually take it literally. And then there's the fundamentalists I think that it's worthy of getting rid of because I think that religion is a superstition. It doesn't mean that we should do so by force or that we should do so, they always like, you worship the government. And so it's like, I don't want government to come in with guns and take away your Bible. That's fine. It's just like, I'll give you another example where I think it's similar. No analogy is truly the same because they're really completely different grounds, but I think it works. Is that I think we should work to get rid of racism. I think that racism is going to get more complicated for racists as we continue to have sex with each other and mate and all this stuff. However, even in this, I don't think it's ever going to go to a utopia or any sort of this thing, but let's just imagine a time where we did end that. My big fear, and what you're saying is true, is let's just say we all become, or what I was saying is we all become something. It'll depend really on where you're living. I think humans may go, well, you're blue-eyed and you're brown-eyed, and I don't like that, and we're going to fight over that. Or you go, well, you're this denomination of the Lord of the Rings Club, and you're this denomination of the Lord of the Rings Club, and then you're going to fight over that. I think tribalism is unfortunately inherent, is in us, and that we should have to fight it. Yes.
Do you remember this story with I was like thinking about it, and it's like how they have the stars. Some of them have the stars on their stomach, and some of them don't. And the people that don't, the ones that don't, get treated worse than the ones that do. So they find out a way to like put stars on their stomach, and so none of them are special. So then they figure out a way to take them off, and suddenly the ones that don't have them are the special ones. And so they keep going back because they just want to be seen as special and superior. Like.
Yes. Well, to 100%. And then a Rick and Morty example is they are being hunted by two different groups of people who have triangle-shaped nipples and people who have square-shaped nipples. And they're about to be rounded up. And they're like, take off your shirt. And they're like, they look at each other and they're like, no. They're like, what kind of nipples do you have? And they're like, you got to understand, we have just regular nipples. And both groups turn to each other, they look at each other, and then they look back at them and they go, get these freaks without nipples, go! And all groups both then start chasing them. Yes, that's us. And so I think it's worthy to fight prejudice wherever it is. I think we should fight that kind of mentality. I think it's worthy of doing so. However, we should always, just because we squish one area doesn't mean we have squished every other area, including, once again, any ones that come once up in the future. I'm looking at you, conscious, sentient, introspective, sentient beings. Anyway, yes, I see so many. I want to just send out love. I see Bree. I see Aunt Juire. So many fantastic people out there sending love. Our dying son, Alma. I can't help it. I just keep on, because this is our community. In fact, speaking of which, I think that sometimes it can be accusatory that I know often in leadership in theistic communities, it can be considered a men's club. I think the way to not have that happen in the atheist community is, I think is to keep on promoting women content creators, having a healthy relationship with both sexes and genders and everyone out there. I'm not complaining. Once again, I'm sending love out to all of the guys out there. I think that we have a strong community in the secular, non-believer, atheist world. I just think we should continue to try and promote that. I think we can do it better than, once again, I've met, misogynistic atheists. I think it's rarer because of the intrinsic nature that many of these Abrahamic religions. However, I've definitely have seen toxicity come from any side. So we should promote it. In fact, I'll say this, even though it's about women, somehow I'm coming to talk about men. But like I've recently seen, because because I got a lot of guys who are like toxic masculinity. Oh my God, more triggering words. You already called me racist and misogynistic and all this. Okay, I get it. But like, hear me out. A lot of what I think our notion of manhood is, being a man and all this, is it shouldn't be tied to a sex or a gender. It should be tied to being an adult. It should be tied to, to use their phrase, to tying up your bootstraps, being there for the people you love, being there, doing what's right in the moment. You can have a positive, to if you're looking for masculinity, a positive masculinity. I just recently saw John Brethnall, I forget his last name, but the Punisher, the guy from The Walking Dead, he talked about how samurai would, yes, be strong and practice in ways of combat, but they would also write poetry. They would also dance. And he talked about how there can be a strength in being just kind to another person who is sad, just on a humanistic level. And so I think that is the type of thing that we should be promoting. It's feminine, masculine. That is the type of people that I think we want to promote. And so we should be offering alternatives. I think that is the real thing. I think we have better alternatives.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. I do want to say that we want to thank everyone for coming today. We did have a question.
Absolutely.
I wanted to bring up.
That's interesting. Question, Ray. What was the most disgusting thing that you heard during a debate that you moderated? See, that is very interesting. I could answer that question like differently. I'll answer halfway for this, and then I'll give you something like hopefully a satisfying other answer. Because when I try and moderate, it's hard because I'm very animated. You could see this. In fact, if you've ever seen me in real life, I never knew this, but I can't stand still. And I'm always moving. And when I ask people this, I'm like, I can't stand still. They're like, oh, yeah, it's a defining feature. And so when I moderate, all of my energy is actually spent on not moving. I try and not laugh. I try and not smile. Because like in the realm of like emotionally connecting with people, in my head, when you smile, when you laugh, because some people will even give me like I don't know if they do this to Kaz or James. However, I've had the like, why doesn't Amy smile more while she's moderating? And it's because if I smile when someone makes a quip, it's because in my head, it means like I'm lending them credence. And sometimes I've even looked at chat and I've been like smiling at something. I've been like, I've had to catch myself. I've heard some really, really silly things. I could tell you I will tell you two things. It's not really disgusting, but I want to joke like it is the most disgusting thing I saw when I was moderating. James tells me I was debating, but I think I was moderating. Is that I have two who I call the pantsless apologist team. We have a running joke on our show that there is a very unique category of apologists. Who knew that there'd be more than one? But they're called pantsless apologists. Gavin Newsom Gavin debated Randolph Richardson pantsless. And so he is the first on our... Gotta let the cat in here. Hi, baby boy. I know. I feel like he just wants the kid food. And so Gavin, and then while I was moderating a flat Earth debate, I think Witsit or Nathan or someone couldn't come by. And so Iron Horse came on. And so Iron Horse Aussie, who has admittedly, like, I've debated him and he wrote like a horrible, he wrote me a drunken, horrible letter at one point with a whole bunch of other numerous obscenities and stuff, being like, not fair, you're terrible in the system, NASA. And I'm like, okay. But that stuff always makes me laugh. And so I'm like, when James was like, can you mod him? I'm like, yep, I don't even give a crap. But he turns out he was in a jacuzzi while he was debating. And so, like, some people wear a bathing suit while they're in a jacuzzi, and other people don't. And it turned out that, like, we definitely had a clear shot of, like, him, that full frontal, not even hinting, not suggesting, and you can see it in my face, like I am questioning what is going on. I don't say anything because, I don't want the debate. I don't want to make it about that. However, I think that's seared into my head. That's the long, short answer. Gavin Newsom is a politician. You're so fucking right. Thank you, Ancher. But it's Gavin. But it's Gavin. Gavin Glasses Gavin. Pantsless Gavin. Get thrown out of Praise's house, Gavin.
Alrighty. Well, I do want to get this wrapped up, but we want to thank everyone for...
Can I say one last thing?
Absolutely.
I just want to say, after all the toxicity, after all of that, I just want to send love out there. I eventually somehow found my way to the YouTube community. And so my last love letter out there to everyone watching, if you are a non-believer, if you're agnostic, atheist, or whatever you identify, you are not alone. I agree, baby boy. And so if you are looking for a community, it wasn't until I felt a little alone in the world, in the more toxic places, until I really found, and I'm sure YouTube, all of them have their space in the dark web, but YouTube, as well as a number of others, have been a great avenue for us to connect. I really do feel like the information age, although we're in the Wild West and lay people don't always know where to get the best information, I feel like we're starting to come out of that. People are starting to understand where good sources of information are. A lot of this I see coming from the atheist community. I feel that we are stronger together, and I think that we do it, unlike the religious people, the religious community, we do it better. And there you go. Be an atheist.
Yeah. Absolutely. And then I just want to give a special thanks to our patrons. We have Sunny Shell, Cindy Plaza, Phil Calderone, Kathy Cotton, Deborah Grace, Aaron Coalson, and Michael Wiseman. And so we're going to thank you for the support. If you are interested and would like to support the work that we are doing, there's a link below the episode, and then we also have a Discord, so if you would like to keep this discussion going, you can absolutely join, but we do want to just thank you for joining us today. Amy, do you want to plug anything that you have coming up?
Sure. Creationists, I want to thank you. I want to thank the entire Skeptic Haven, Woman Atheist Unloaded. I want to also let multiple kitties out. Hold on 1 second. I know, one kitty out, one kitty in. So I would just like to send not only love, if you are looking for more fun, skeptic, often atheist, but theist, anyone who wants to come on content, feel free to come down to my channel. I am youtube.com/Amy Newman, because I am Amy Newman. My joke is always, you can call me Amy, because it is short for Amy. I am with the lovely James W., sending love out to him. And also, I really do mean this, if you are out there on the interwebs, you should be hitting the like and subscribe button right now. Right now. So thank you so very much.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement. I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Everything I do so instinctive and so passionate. Every word I move so descriptive like an adjective. I got a vendetta against people who patented being negative when you should be getting after it. I got facts over tracks, this and that, spitting slow, spitting fast. I could roast, I could gas, think I'm okay at last, but I don't know if that can erase all the past. And the pettiness, a reflection of the emptiness, hilarious. You